I would like to call to order the RSU 14 Wyndham Raymond School District Board of Directors meeting. It is 6:30 p.m. on August 5th, 2020, and we are not in a Zoom meeting. We are at Wyndham High School Auditorium. Mr. Howell?
Kate Bricks.
Here.
Jenny Butler.
Here.
Janie Cummings.
Here.
Marge Gavoni.
Here.
Pete Hensler.
Here.
Anna Keeney.
Here.
Kate Levier.
Here.
Scott McLean.
Here.
Christina Small.
Here. Will you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Howell, were there any adjustments to the agenda?
There was one adjustment to the agenda that was sent out earlier today. It's different from the agenda that was sent out Friday, and that is the inclusion of an opportunity for public comment on the back-to-school plan following the presentation. That wasn't in the previous agenda, and that's been added.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we'll have a time for public input, an opportunity for the public to comment on items which are not in the agenda. Any public wanting to input? Okay, seeing none, we will start with policies. Could I have a motion, please? Oh, first let's have discussion about all of the policies.
The federal DOE has made some substantial changes to Title IX, and that impacts our current policies. Christine Trosberton-A has done substantial work on getting us up to speed, and I'm going to take it over to her.
Sure. So, too loud. May 7th, the United States Department of Ed released the final Title IX regulations. They go into effect August 14th. We have established a working group that will be reviewing policies, handbooks, website information, etc., with the new regulations at the forefront of our thinking as we go through all of those documents. That includes Title IX training, so we want to take a close look at the training process. There are significant changes in the regulations. These include revisions to the definition of prohibited conduct, and they also include extensive procedural requirements regarding receiving and responding to sexual harassment claims. So the working group will be working through all of those documents, and your first read as board members, you will see the suggested revisions that Maine School Management, in conjunction with Drummond Woodsum, worked on some recommended changes to policies. So you'll see those in your board packets.
And we will be voting, this is our first read, so we'll be voting next week. Okay, can I have a motion? Kate?
I move to approve the first reading of Policy AC, Non-Discrimination, Equal Opportunity, and Affirmative Action. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries.
It's nice to not have to do the roll call.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're laughing at. I move to approve the first reading of Policy ACAA, Harassment and Sexual Harassment of Students.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion?
I just noticed that there's a typo on page 2. That's the only thing that I have to add. Line number 3, item number 3.
I saw that too. On policy?
Yep.
Okay. We'll check that out when we go through it. Thanks. Did you get that?
Yep.
Anybody else? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Marge?
I move to approve the first reading of Policy ACAA, ACA-R, Student Discrimination and Harassment Complaint Procedure.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? Christina?
When I was reading through this, I noticed that it specifically stated that if prohibited conduct did not happen on school grounds, that we had to dismiss it, and that was language that was not included in the first policy.
Right.
I wondered if there was any sort of other way, like maybe disciplinary action or something that we could do if such a thing occurred.
Yep. So if I can take that. Under ACAR, under that investigative procedure, in the previous ACAA, there was a requirement for districts. This is, again, one of those changes at the federal level of Title IX. If something is happening outside of school and is brought into school and then starting to have an impact, we would be obligated to investigate it under JICK, which is our bullying and harassment policy, which would be the state law that would then govern how we do that. So, well, it might not go through that ACAR investigation. It would go through a JICK.
Another question following up on that. Where it states specifically on school property, and we're facing the possibility of a lot of virtual classroom learning, we need a call out specific to include that as well?
Anything that impacts the educational program under JIC is, I hate to say investigatable, if that's even a word, but is a responsibility of the district to then take a look at. So if it happens on our computers, on our time, and is impacting our learning, then we have an obligation under that policy to investigate.
Awesome, thank you for clarifying.
Scott?
I had a question. It is in response to Section B, complaint handling and investigation. Item number 6, the complainant shall not be required to attend meetings with the respondent, but may choose to do so as part of an informal resolution process. Is that pretty standard across the board when it comes to these types of complaints? That the complainant does not need to attend?
And I think in that particular example, if you want to go to the far end, if there was a sexual assault between two students and you had someone who did the assault and then someone who was the victim of that, that person wouldn't necessarily be obligated to sit with their perpetrator and go through a meeting with them. Yeah. However, if it's something that might be a little lighter, disagreement between students, then maybe as part of that you might have students come and do a mediation or some other, but that allows you not to necessarily have to require the person.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. You all set to vote? All those in favor? Okay. Motion carries. Jenny?
I move to approve the first reading of policy ACAB, harassment and sexual harassment of school employees.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Pete?
I move to approve the first reading of policy ACAB-R, employee discrimination, harassment, and Title IX sexual harassment complaint procedures.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? Christina?
There was the language as written currently states that the superintendent's decision had been final, and there was a note that we could say it could be appealed to the board. I don't necessarily have an opinion, but I wanted to bring it up and maybe make sure it's in alignment with other policies like it. How the board is set on that.
So I think it's a good question we can ask of our attorney who is helping us through this, Alan Krupp. Person would have the right to appeal to the superintendent. There are other avenues for appeal, either through Maine Human Rights Commission or through other places. And ultimately, even if the policy said to the superintendent, there may be opportunity before the board, but we'll clarify that with the attorney and make sure that we get the right answer for that for you
Anyone else? All those in favor? Okay, the motion carries. All right, it's now time for the RSU 14 back to school plan.
Christine, I'll have you click for me if you wouldn't mind.
Yes.
So thank you all for coming out tonight, and I know we have some people who are going to be participating via Zoom and sharing some of their thoughts. And I know that this is a topic of interest for everybody, not only in our community, but every single community across the state of Maine and every community across the U.S. And I know it's an issue of concern, and it's something that we all want to do well, and it's something that we all want to do safely. And we also recognize that we all have a desire to return to school as we knew it back on March 12th, before all of us were launched into a pandemic. And so I know this is an issue of concern, and I know that this is something that needs to be thoroughly discussed, and that everyone has the opportunity then to share their ideas. Christine Frostburton-Nay and Christine Hessler and Lisa Garneau and some people in this room have had the opportunity to participate in the process of developing this, have the chance to contribute. We've also been looking at guidance from other schools, guidance from Maine CDC, guidance from Maine Department of Education, Federal Department of Education. This has been the #1 project that our district has been working on probably since May, as far as how do we reopen schools and how do we do it and how do we do it well. So again, tonight is an opportunity for us to talk a little bit about that process. Something that I know we have to be careful of and want to be careful with all of you is that this is all that we've been doing for all these months, and there are things that we've talked through and understand, or problems that we've come across, and you've not had the opportunity to wrestle through that with us. So to the extent that we can share the background of how we came to some decisions, we're going to try to do that for you tonight, because this is, again, it's one of the most important topics. And I'm just thinking back over my almost 30 years in public education. I think it's the most difficult project that I've ever worked on. And it's the one that, like many of you, it's the last thing that I go to bed thinking about, and it's the first thing I start thinking about when I wake up in the morning. And I know many of you are in the same spot as you're prepping to go back. So we're going to provide an overview for you tonight, and the board will not be voting tonight. Give an opportunity to ask questions, and but we'll have kind of an opportunity to talk about what my thoughts are, what direction that I see for the district, and obviously have a chance to hear from all of you. So Christine, if you would mind being the clicker, I need that little ding that we could do. So tonight in our presentation, to go over the governance team and some of the people who've worked on this, the reopening plan, some of the health and safety measures of things that we've worked on, talk a little bit about the questionnaire that many of you have had a chance to complete. I think as of this afternoon, we had over 2,000 completions of that. Talking about some next steps and questions and answers. And so if you look at the little graphic there on the left, and I know board members, you have the presentation right in front of you, but looking at going back to school and planning for this is all means all. We need to be thinking about all of our learners that we've worked through this process. We need to create a process that's going to engage students. We need to listen to all of you and listen to your thoughts and ideas. We need to prioritize, work through the consensus, and then again goes back to how do we plan and provide the best possible education for our students. And over on the wall there, left and right, is our mission and vision for this district, which remind everybody is success for all. And that's really what we're all about. So Christine, if you wouldn't mind going ahead. So planning teams. We hadn't finished the school year this year when we were already into planning for next year, the 2020-2021 year. So May, June, COVID-19 planning teams included governance, goal in ensuring safety, equity, and accessibility for all, health services, working with our nurses and our health staff, who I just want to say is absolutely amazing as they have worked through and have problem solved and try to figure out what's going to work for us. Groups working on teaching and learning, because one of the questions I've received is that Some kids had a great distance learning experience. Others had a difficult time. How are we as a district, how are we going to go ahead and make adjustments for students who are coming in with different home lives and different experiences they've had through this? How do we make those adjustments? And there's been some groups working on that. School operations. How do you safely return 3,200 students and over 700 staff to a facility? And so all the different safety and whether it be facilities, transportation, school nutrition. Shout out to Bill and Mike and Jeannie for the work that they've done and the creativity. Athletics and activities, Rich Drummond and Phil Rossetti. I'm trying to remember the other person who worked on that committee. Looking at athletics and activities and what we offer our students, adult education, Tom Nash working with Christine. And then curriculum committee and policy review, the board looking through policy. Shifting gears into July, we worked to develop a draft 2020-2021 school reopening plan. Staff members in the room, that was emailed to all of you sometime middle of last week, where we had a chance to send that. On Friday, we sent our community family commitment questionnaire after receiving some notifications from the state of Maine as far as for our planning. We took a survey from the staff after they had a chance to read the plan, what pieces were missing, what are things that they want us to take a look at. Oh, then I will stand right here. How's that? This is really awkward, Christine. Let me just say that. Communication plans and how we're actually going to communicate all this out. And our hybrid planning model or distance learning model. How are we going to collect that information? What's going to work for us, and how do we best do that? And so lots of different people working on this plan, trying to make actually what would make sense for our district. In addition, we were engaged in conversations not only with our community, Cumberland County, people across the state, and people across the country. How do we do this, and how do we do this well, and how do we do it so that we make sure that we are being successful? Boy, it takes a village to run a PowerPoint, doesn't it? Our governance team, and this is a group that has been working through and vetting some of the documents. So myself, Christine Frostburton-Nay, Christine Hessler, Lisa Garno, Bill Hansen, Bob Hickey, Randy Crockett, Kyle Rhodes, Julie Young, Mike Duffy, and also a big thank you to Becca Cole and Jamie McAlpine taking summertime to meet with us Monday mornings at 8, from 8 to 10, to go through what are some of the documents, what are some of the policies and procedures that we're putting into place, and how do we best communicate this to staff. And I really just also want to say thank you to both of them because they've been great letting us know what does staff need to hear right now, what's the information that they need, and they've been a great conduit for us. So thank you to both of them for stepping up and doing that and helping us out with that. So I want to talk about the infamous green, yellow, red chart. Because I think this particular chart has created some challenges for us, and also has created some challenges as far as how we communicate out to the community, what it is that we can do, what are our opportunities, and what are our challenges. And if we go back to, really it was about the third week of July, the Department of Education originally put out a green, yellow, red chart. The red chart was districts should be engaged in full remote learning. Yellow was that districts should be considering a hybrid model, so not bringing all their students in. And then green being 100% return to campus, business as usual, welcome back, everybody come home, doors are open. So that was third week of July. We then move into the end of July, and the safety guidelines came out for reopening of school, which included 3 feet of social distancing between students, 6 feet for staff, everyone wearing masks, hand sanitizing, hand washing, looking at cohorting of students where you could, putting capacities in a space like this, and we see it tonight with 50 students in a large space, And for those of you who've experienced a school lunch, I know we have some parents that are here, but for those staff members who experience a school lunch, it's rare that you would have 50 in a space, that you would go ahead and do that. In addition, still the safety challenges of no more than 26 students on a bus for transportation. We run as a district 31 buses. Typically they're running 65 to 70 students on those, so 25 is a little different. But again, these levels that you see, so that red being 100% distance learning, yellow being looking at a hybrid, and green looking at on-campus or a hybrid learning situation. In the state's most recent communication to all of us, which all of us saw on Friday, and all of us saw on the exact same time on Friday, that every county in the state of Maine had been listed as green. Unfortunately, communities, the newspaper, everyone thought that green was 100% no safety guidelines, when in fact green was yellow, which basically was all the safety guidelines, to what extent can you bring students into your building. So it created a little bit of confusion out there, and some things that we've taken some steps to go ahead and clear up. But in essence, by the state declaring our county as green, was that it would then give the opportunity to say, meeting those social distance guidelines and the safety guidelines, to what extent can you bring students in? And so we have some small districts in the state of Maine with very few students who are looking to bring 100% of their students back for the start of school. We have some larger districts, and I think you all saw Portland in the paper, probably I think it was Monday and today, because of size requirements and working on a transition plan, starting with a hybrid model, with some kids starting in and doing some alternating day, and I think high school 11 to 12, they were staying in distance. And to my knowledge right now, I don't know of any district that's starting in red. We'll have to wait and see as guidance changes. The other piece that I think everyone should be clear, and anyone who's watching via Zoom tonight, is that the state designations will be updated every 2 weeks. So what we received on Friday, we will receive another designation on August 14th, and we will receive another designation on August 28th. And then continuing on in that pattern, whatever that falls, September 12th, then we'll continue to get another designation. The other thing that we could also say for our Zoom watchers, and hi everyone on Zoom, if you go to our district website and if you go to tonight's agenda, a copy of the PowerPoint is on that agenda so that you can open it up. And Christine has asked if and actually if you and a co-host, or I can do it as host, is mute everybody. Yep, so you can go ahead and do that.
Cue the Jeopardy song.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the hybrid before we go on, because there's been some significant discussion, and I've received a number of questions. Why did the district, when looking at a hybrid model, why did the district choose this particular model of a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? And again, I think this is one of those spots where, unless you have all the information behind, you may not fully understand why a district would go in that direction. So, as much as I would like to say that RSU 14, Wyndham Raymond, is an island, we are not. We are not an island. We have students that attend 2 vocational regions. Students go to Westbrook Vocational as their primary spot, and students also have the opportunity to go to Paths in Portland. Our primary spot is Westbrook. Westbrook chose as a flex day Friday, which means that if we did anything other than Friday, then our students who attend vocational school would not be able to access the vocational program 1 day a week. And when you're already going to school only 2 days a week, when you lose one, then you've already lost 50% of your vocational time. And for those programs, students have a specific number of hours that they must meet for their certification. So it required us to then look at that Friday. And so a majority of the schools that send to Westbrook all have Friday as that flex day. I've received some questions about why not do a Monday, Tuesday, and a Wednesday, Thursday? And as we had some discussions about instruction, how do you take 2 days and look to spread that possibly out over 4 days so that you get the most instruction? So in reality, the model would be this, if we were in a hybrid, would be that students would come to school on a Monday, conceivably 50% of your population. They would be home on Tuesday, and on Monday, teacher would have had the opportunity to have their students for the day. Here are some things that I want you to be working on for tomorrow. When I see you again on Wednesday, we're going to be going over those things or having discussion on those items. Or here's some things that I want you to work on. Something that's a little different, and I think everyone needs to be very clear up front, that if I have students on Monday and in Group A, that if I'm a classroom teacher, I have a new group of students coming in on B, that second Tuesday, and my attention in my day is going to be with those students who are in front of me. And so to then have people who have the expectation that a teacher is going to be attending to the students in front of them while also holding a Zoom call or doing some other pieces, we know that that wasn't something that we could necessarily do. The other thing is that Christine and I have had a number of conversations with our local daycare providers. And that is a wonderful group of individuals who have a huge, huge heart for the kids in RSU 14. But also, for many of our students, those off days will not be at home. They will be at a daycare facility. And we've heard from some of the daycare providers that it's very, very difficult for them to do things with technology to get kids on. But as far as packets, work, support things, that's something that they feel like that is something that they would be able to do.
Chris, could you ask people on Zoom to please mute themselves?
Yeah, I
We
was
tried.
wondering if we have a way to mute
We've
all.
been putting it in the chat and they're not listening.
Sometimes
Could you
presenters
just
can
make
mute
that-
all, 'cause I get messages about
Yeah,
that
we're
too.
trying.
Oh, wait a minute. This isn't how we practiced it. Marge, you had a question? Maybe I can answer that while they're Zooming.
Yeah, I do. If we have questions as you go along, you want us to ask them then, or do you want us to wait till the very end?
I'm fine with either, Marge.
Well, I have a question now.
Sure, go ahead.
You talked about the Monday, Wednesday, and Tuesday, Thursday, and I totally understand everything you said. The question I have is, what resource, if any, is available to the student who came to school Monday, does not go back till Wednesday, has given whatever they're supposed to be working on Tuesday, has a problem with what they're supposed to be doing and can't do it? Do they have an option, or do they have to wait till they get back to school on the following day to bring that question forward, and they will have not done what they should have done? That's my question.
So the best way I can answer that is that that student would be able to reach out to the teacher, but it would be similar to a student that would not be in school that day. It would be out for an absent, that to the point where that teacher could get to that.
I really can't hear you.
That's okay. So it wouldn't be the expectation that someone could answer it immediately, because under that situation, I don't think it's something that we would be able to do or guarantee to a student. But as soon as, much like a student who may be absent a given day would go ahead and email a question they have to a teacher, when the teacher had the opportunity to get to that, to then answer that. But it would not be immediate feedback.
Would that also be the case for students who, and I'm getting into Lisa's realm now, students with IEPs or 504 plans? Is that a similar
Yeah,
thing?
and I think in a minute, when we get to special ed, maybe I can
Okay,
answer that during
that's
that.
fine. Thank you.
How are we doing over there, guys?
I think we're good.
Takes a team to do a PowerPoint. The other thing I want to mention with a hybrid, and I know I've spent a lot of time on this slide, but I think it's where we're going to see the greatest number of questions, is how do you split a district? And if you want to go 50%. And the best way to split a district in RSU 14 is A to K and L to Z. Alphabetically, believe it or not, it's within about 3 or 4 students right down the middle when you go with those particular portions of the alphabet. And I know someone's going to ask the question, what about those families that have different last names? We have that spreadsheet, and we'll be reaching out to families should we go in this direction, and we'll be reaching out to families to then make a decision which day makes most sense for them. Because one of the guiding things that has really held us for families, it would be inconsiderate for us as a district to have elementary in with one name on one day and high school in on another, for those families that rely upon an older sibling to then take care of a younger sibling. And so working to have families together on the exact same day.
Christine, can you unmute?
We're having,
Can you unmute her
people
hand?
are saying that they can't hear you.
You sound far away. Can you unmute him? So you should turn it.
Sure. I'll even sing if it...
Please don't.
Chris, can you pull your mask down since you spent more time with us than your wife?
Right.
Oh, it might be easier.
What if I hold this and so I can...
She says it's better.
It's better.
How about this? So that's really it for that slide. It was a good breaking point, at that. So the other questions that we've been receiving, and I'm going to stand right here so everyone can see me on Zoom, health and safety guidelines. And we've received clarification and guidance from Maine CDC as to specific things that they would like to have us put into place. And I'm not even going to say like to have us, that are required to put in place if we want to open as a district. So one is working with our staff on travel. And there's some policies and procedures that we're working through on that, because there are states right now currently where requirement in the state of Maine, if you travel to that state and you return, that you either need to get a COVID test or you need to quarantine. There's a requirement that every employee, and this also includes every student, must run through a COVID-19 self-check every single day. And in a minute, we'll share the graphic that we'll be sending out to students and families. We've already sent it to staff in that outline and that plan. And if someone is showing any of those symptoms, that they then communicate with the nurse. And the nurse will walk them through the next steps with that. All employees, and this is a requirement from the state, will be provided with 2 coverings or masks or a shield. And the shield, there's specific requirements for shield or specific exceptions, which is if there's a health behavior or other medical condition that a shield makes more sense. Employees may wear their own face covering or mask, but I will say to our employees that we ordered you some very nice ones from Hyperlight in Biddeford. I understand they make some great backpacks, but they also make masks. We've also ordered face shields for everyone, which I still have 4 cases in my office of those. In addition to that PPE, we have been working with the state of Maine, and we have 8 pallets of PPE coming from the Maine National Guard on Friday, which includes everything from face masks to Clorox wipes to gowns to some N95 masks for our nurses to surgical masks. And I think we have, 8,000 cases of wipes coming to work. And then this final piece, and I know there's been a lot of discussion on social media and other places, adults maintaining 6 feet of social distance from others to the extent possible. And I realize that Christine and I are not doing that right now.
But it's perfect. I'm getting texts that they can see the PowerPoint and they can hear you. Keep going.
Yeah, I'll also mention, and again, shout out to Christine, that she's been my quarantine person, and we've been in the office working together since March 19th, working through some of these problems. So it's probably the one person who I've had the greatest contact outside my own family working through this. And that maintaining of 3 feet of social distance among students when combined with other measures outlined. Those other measures would be the mask and the hand sanitizing and the daily hand washing. So, Christine, if you wouldn't mind going ahead. That's okay. So this is a graphic that was given to us by Maine Department of Education. We will be sending this home to families, and we'll be also making it available in 12 different languages to families. But it is a daily screener for students. Staff will be using the exact same one. Are you exhibiting any of these symptoms? Have you been to places that require you to quarantine? And for staff member, if you are saying yes to any of these things, then you're calling and letting us know that you can't come to work that day. And if you are a student, then we need you, as your parents, to keep you home that day. And then going forward, if students are showing other symptoms, then there's other protocol for either complete isolation from the school for 14 days or COVID testing. So I'm going to go back to, if you can go back to that slide, please. The one on the, so again, it goes back to prior to students coming into RSU 14, which for many kids is a school bus, that they're completing that self-checklist, that they're wearing face-covering mask, that they're using those prevention measures, and we've had great discussion about playground use. And playground use, if you're following hand sanitizing, hand washing, wearing of masks, kids can use the playground.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you just let the folks on Zoom know that we will have questions at the end that will get read from the Zoom chat?
Yep. Sure.
I think they can hear you. If you say it, they can't hear me.
So for those of you who are on Zoom, we will be, during public comment, taking some of your questions. And to the extent we can answer your questions right off, we will. If we need to send further guidance or refer you to a document, we'll do that as well. We will be publishing to the website. This document has been completed. I'm not sure if it was uploaded tonight, but it will be at least by either Thursday or Friday. A complete return to school guideline for students and families to understand what are the requirements that they would need to do in order to attend back to school. So let's talk about when someone's sick. Probably the number one question that I've received. What happens? Well, if someone's sick, we don't want them to get other people sick. So again, as a requirement by Maine CDC for a student to attend school, that they need to go through that daily checklist. So signs or symptoms of respiratory illness, fever greater than 100.4 or higher. The other thing we're working on with communication is that we also do not want parents using Tylenol to reduce a fever to send a student to school. There's also been some discussions about temperature taking for students prior to coming to school. The guidance we received is that really with temperature taking for everybody, it doesn't get you to your desired result because you could have someone who's asymptomatic who's not showing a temperature. So doing that as a screening tool doesn't necessarily make you any safer than if you not doing that. Students who have a fever greater than 100.4 will be referred to the nurse, and the nurses have a protocol that they're doing. Students will not be penalized for missing school. It's a question we receive. To stay home in those guidelines. School nurses are champions for health care, working with family with those symptoms. And students developing a fever during school hours, our nurses and our building and our grounds are working on medical isolation rooms so that students can be isolated till their parents can come. And we want to make sure that kids are coming in and that they're safe and our staff are safe. And then properly cleaning and disinfecting those spaces. I'm not going to spend too much time with this because it's more staff related, but one of the questions we received from staff members, go ahead, Marge.
And I'm not sure, I was curious what the CDC says about if a student is discovered to be sick while they're in school, what is the protocol for the rest of that student's classes, or if a teacher, what happens to that class? What's the protocol there?
So if there's a direct contact case with a student in a classroom, and that classroom would then be asked to go home for 2 weeks. along with that classroom teacher.
Thank you.
And one thing that we've asked for from Maine CDC are some contact tracing protocols that they will be using so that we'll be fully prepared for those should the event that happens. But that's what ends up happening. That's the requirement. So for staff, similarly, if that's right, you're not actually controlling them. Okay. For staff, symptoms identified, we want them to stay home. Just like if anyone's sick, we don't want to come to work. A couple options to do would be to call their primary care physician, get tested, report the results, or self-isolate. And there's some particular procedures that are there for staff members that are here. This is in the guidance that was sent to you. In addition, if we have a positive case result in a staff member, then we have some requirements through Maine CDC for reporting. And as part of that also to just let the superintendent's office know that we are dealing with a positive case so that we can properly inform everyone that we need to in order to be able to take care of things. So changes to the facility, because these are often the things that people don't actually ever see, but some things that we've been working on. Signage, and we've been able to partner with Time for Printing, a local company, working on social distancing signage that will be floors, walls, bathrooms, windows, doors around the school, and they've been a great partner with that. And again, to remind about traffic patterns, social distancing. Each of the buildings, we've been doing some upgrade work on air filtration, increasing the amount of outside fresh air circulating into the building. And for high school staff members in the building, or in this presentation tonight, all of the screens have been returned to all of the windows. And many of you might have lived when we were relying on air conditioning, that the screens were taken out so people wouldn't open the windows. Well, we're going to encourage people to open the windows for that. We are increasing daytime custodial staff so that we can make sure that we're hitting hard touch surfaces, frequently touched surfaces. Touchless faucets. I think we secured some of the last touchless faucets in some of the plumbing supply places so that instead of people all having to touch the sink to wash their hands, now going touchless in those things. And again, with touchless with the toilets, going to some automatic flushes. Alcohol-based hand sanitizer being provided at all the buildings. We have 560 gallons of hand sanitizer coming this week in 1-gallon containers that will be distributed amongst everyone in the RSU. And then replacing traditional water fountains, which will be turned off with touchless water bottles so that people don't have to actually use them. Staff provided with disinfecting wipes for classroom use, making sure that they can take care of the areas that they're working in. And then those medical isolation rooms, the nurses have been working with Bill to take care of that. Other questions we've been getting. Breakfast and lunch, to the extent possible, served in classrooms or outdoors. Where possible. We know in some cases that's not possible, and it's actually better to do in our cafeterias. At lunchtime, the 3-foot social distance actually goes to 6-foot social distance for students to be able to take their masks off. The other reason for outdoors, to the extent possible, and we've ordered, I think, 30 picnic tables for some of the campus buildings so that people can have the opportunity and students have the opportunity to get outside and to eat. The other thing that outside time provides for is that as part of our planning, school administrators need to also provide a mask break for students so that they have the opportunity to take their mask off outside and be distanced from other individuals, or mask breaks inside the building, properly socially distanced. We are discouraging, prohibiting shared food. And this may impact food celebrations where they might be, but you already have a policy where that does not happen that much any longer, but any shared food wouldn't be happening. Proper hand washing, and then Jeannie's been working on individually covered, wrapped utensils salad bars, those types of things would be eliminated in all the different buildings, and things would become grab and go. So the same things that would still be in a salad bar will be available, but the grab. Transportation. Bus drivers, who really are our first point of contact with students during the day, making sure that we have properly socially distanced spaces between a bus driver and their students, maintain that distance. Right now, the guidance we have is 26 students on a bus as far as our maximum load capacity. Exceptions also made for students can sit together with family members. Some brothers and sisters may not actually like that, but it does increase our capacity on those buses. In addition, it's another reason why, if you look at going to a hybrid model, that you would want to have families on the same day, because it does help with transportation. I also want to mention, in the family survey that was sent out, I think we're now over 40% of families have said that they would willingly drive their student back and forth to school every day if it means that they could actually make it back into school. We have, 26 vans in the district, so a driver and up to 2 children, so the 3, and then cleaning those bus and vans after the completion of those runs and routes in between groups of students. Christine, if you would mind going ahead. Athletics. I wish I could give you my crystal ball on what's going to happen with athletics, and I think what the MPA is struggling with is that we have our cohorts, we have our students, we know who's going to be on given days, coaches know their students, and within hard, strenuous physical activity, which everything I've been reading with virus is droplets and other things being spread that way through airborne. When you have people in close proximity that are from different schools competing with one another in close space, it does create some challenges. So the MPA fall sports season is still kind of a question mark as far as what that season is going to look like. Still is a goal right now of starting up on August 24th for preseason, and the guidance being pods of students not interacting, again, keeping the smaller groups, maintaining them in that. Students wearing face masks except for when they're doing hard physical activity, bringing their own water bottles, social distancing, kind of a common theme going through. The other thing, if I could just share with that, if we have any middle school athletic parents that are here, I think I saw some guidance this week that is going to be pushed off for the start of the middle school season until mid-September. Okay, Lisa?
All right, so welcome everybody. I'm Lisa Garno, the Director of Student Services. I would just say, if anybody can invent a makeup that will stay on under my mask, I'm in. So this is not working for me. But anyway, I think special ed is probably the one area where we received a ton of questions about what is special ed going to look like. And I think the best way to think about it is we need to plan for all students, and then we need to layer on top of that the services that will be provided to not only special ed students or students who receive special ed services, but 504, RTI, GT, that whole ELL, the whole gamut. And so really, I think what I wanted to share with you tonight is that information from the Family Commitment Questionnaire and the staff survey are really valuable for us as we start to really finalize and solidify what reopening is going to look like. But I also received a lot of emails and calls from not only parents, but case managers and caregivers who are supporting our most fragile or most challenged students for whom we know that remote learning was really difficult. And so we've just recently received some guidance from the Department of Education in Drummond and Woodson that we are going to be able to look at some different opportunities for some populations within the special education world. So we'll be doing that over the next couple weeks. But I just wanted folks to know who's been at the table. So I'm on my second 6-inch binder of COVID-related material. And we've been working with not only the Department of Education, multiple people in there, but particularly Commissioner Macon and Aaron Frazier, the Director of Student Services. Other voices are, as you know, Drummond and Whitson, that represents the school districts across Maine. The Maine Parent Federation, they just put out a really nice questionnaire for parents to ask about returning to school. Happy to share that. It's a great resource, and we've used it as guidance to make sure that we've got those things built into our plans. The Office of Disability Rights, Atlee Riley, has really been a great advocate for both parents and schools as we work through this. And again, we're looking at superintendents, assistant superintendents, curriculum, and other special ed directors across the state, but particularly in Cumberland County and York County. And so I will be meeting with our special ed site coordinators over the next week and a half, depending upon what their availability is. And we're really going to drill down to student by student and see what options we're going to have, given the students that we know will be returning and those that are going to do remote, or some are going to do a hybrid, and what is that going to look like. So please stay tuned. I will update you all as soon as I can, and I apologize for, I guess what I said to Chris and Christine is I tried to keep the guardrails on because I didn't want to share something that we might be able to do and then not be able to do it. That would have been worse for me. So we'll know very shortly what we're going to be able to do.
So next we're going to talk about instruction, and so as we finished last year, we had the opportunity to talk to our educators, talk to educators around the state about what this means for teaching and learning. And so what we've done this summer is to really build a huge suite of resources for our staff. I'm going to walk through some of these today and know that this is an ongoing process. So feedback from surveys to staff and community was used to inform our next steps regarding distance or hybrid or even in-person instruction, because we know if we're in person, it's still going to look differently. And so these sections right now represent the larger parts of the work this summer and as we're moving forward. Chris, can you get it?
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. So we have the big part we have is a brand new website. This is created to help staff access the information needed for the reopening of schools. We know all of this keeps changing, but included in this suite is self-paced modules for staff on hybrid learning and then distance learning, so that we're all aligned in what we're doing with our students pre-K through 12 now. We also have here learning and teaching websites by grade level and then by content area, and you'll see that in just a minute. We also have a suite of tools for distance learning and how-to videos. We recognize that there are so many different things teachers want to use in their classroom. How do I do it? So we're working on having that all information at the tip of your fingers. And lastly, we have templates for unit design and project-based learning, which I'll go into in just a second. So this is the teaching and learning resources. This has and is organized by grade levels, by schools, and by content area for Windham High School. We also have a special site for our specialists. And now, because it's housed in one area, specialists are any OT, PT, special education, JMG, they can navigate each grade level and content from one landing page. Each website has its resources tailored to the needs of that grade level or that content area. And so this is an example. I believe it's a 6th grade at Jordan Small Middle School. And so this is the layout of it, and all the tiles are being added. So this website is only to assist teachers. This is not a mandatory thing. This is a wealth of resources for you to pick and choose and use when you need to. This is nothing new that we're adding onto your plates. It's all in one location. So it contains in a drop-down, which I can't show you live, but if you're working in designing ELA, you can click a button and it will drop down your standards and performance indicators that are in your reporting system for your grade level and your school. We have 3 separate reporting systems: Infinite Campus, Illuminate, and Jump Rope. They're all tailored to the exact one that you are working from. We also have templates, so in case an individual, a PLC team, or a grade level want to build a unit together, you would have a common template to use and put all your information along with your resources. And we also have helpful links for staff to assist in digital, hybrid, or in-person learning. So for example, if you're looking at this one for grade 6, we have Google Meet, We have the main digital library you may want to access, Google Classroom. I know for our younger learners, we have Seesaw. So the ones that are tailored that you use will be on your page so that you have access to it. Across the top on these websites, they also have those, again, those modules for you. If we're in hybrid, how do I do hybrid? What are the things I should consider? You can self-paste and find some information. We also have a template for where to post what's going on during the week. So you can alert families to know this is what's happening this week. And then we're building a really nice suite with an infotech team that we have here that really has dug down and across the state on what it means for distance learning. They have really great tips for us to be organized and to be thoughtful. How do we build relationships with kids? If we're not in person, but we're half person, we have all these pieces that we're putting together for you. And we're going to continue to add resources to all these grade level pages. As you, as staff, come back and you say, hey, this grade level, we really need help with this, we can set that up for you and have it so it's organized in one spot for you. And I really can't wait for us to be out. So just miss you guys. So.
Thank you. My arm's tired. Need to go to the gym. So we'd like to get to the questionnaire results. The questionnaire was, we asked for feedback by today. When I left my office, I think we were at 2,003 responses. So 2,003 families have provided input into this family commitment questionnaire. It is on the district site. So if you have not yet submitted your responses, you could still do so. We do want your input. We want to hear from everybody. It's really important. So starting with the first question, families can opt to have their students participate in full remote instruction or distance learning, regardless of the model that the district proposes. Understanding that some families may have concerns about returning to hybrid or in-person fully. We understand that, and so we're providing the opportunity for you to opt to remain in distance. Understand there would be a schedule of synchronous and asynchronous instruction happening online using some of those resources Christine Hessler just spoke about. So the question for families was, do you plan for your children to participate in RSU 14 full remote learning in the fall? So do you plan to have them stay at home with a schedule, working with a teacher and staff in a distance manner? So at this, earlier this evening, we had 1,536 families respond, that's 76.7%, responded saying they want their children to come back in whatever model the district is in. 10.4% of the respondents would rather stay at home engaged in distance learning.
Christine, I'm just going to mute Zoom here because I think it's causing some feedback echo for those folks.
Moving on to the next important question, will you or another adult be transporting your child or children to and from school in the fall? As Mr. Howell discussed earlier, transportation is an immense challenge that districts all over the state and country are trying to figure out. So if you are able to transport to and from, we needed that information. 49.6% as of a few hours ago, or 993 families responded that they could transport their child and commit to transporting both to and from school. 34.1% will need to rely on district transportation. That will inform our next steps with planning transportation, routes, pickup times, etc. And then we had folks who expressed that they'd be able to transport either to school and not pick up at the end of the day, or at the end of the day could pick up but could not transport in the morning. And so we're not sure if we would be able to accommodate, but we wanted to gather that information from families, trying to gather as much as we can to inform our next steps with planning. Marge?
On the folks who are transporting their children, with that number of adults transporting students, are we prepared to handle the traffic? Basically, it's kind of like, and I don't know if it's separated by school, but if, say, the majority of those were at the primary school, which has a pretty big backup now during drop-off and pickup, would we stagger the start times or anything so that people could get there?
So,
I'm just wondering if that's being addressed.
one of the questions for those of you in Zoom is in regards to the folks who can pick up and drop off, that causes another issue regarding congestion at schools. I'm sure you understand already what that's like when you try to drop your child off in the morning. With those numbers increasing, that would be a challenge. So that's another part of the work, is to figure out transportation, pickup, drop off for families, and how we're going to address congestion.
I already went to the next slide, and we need to do that on that. Because I wanted to come back to this slide, which actually, Marge, I think might help to answer some of the questions about transportation. Given all the work that's been done and all the preparation that's been done, because every time that it says hand sanitizer, PPE, social distance, food in plastic containers, all of those things represent an action that someone in the district has already taken to prepare for school. So it's not that it's just something written on a page. Same thing with extra custodial staff, that people have taken measures to make sure that that can happen. So these are all planning pieces that have taken place: air ventilation, installation of faucets, all those other health safety things. And so it's not like there's just a plan and there's nothing behind it. There's all these other pieces. But I can't recommend to you, based upon the recommendation that came from the state, of agreeing 100% full open. I can't. It's my hope that what we've seen for cases within the state of Maine, and then also cases within the community of Wyndham and Raymond, which I look every week to see where those numbers are at, it's my hope that those continue to either remain steady or continue to drop as to where they are. And when I say steady, I think last time I checked for town of Wyndham, we were right around 51, 52, 53, somewhere in there. Raymond was at 14. That number has stayed pretty steady for a number since around June. It hasn't moved around a whole lot. But even given those numbers and given some of the challenges, we are not prepared as a district to open up 100% given some of those bustling things. The only way that we can open to some face-to-face instruction would be through a hybrid model. And Marge, going to your question about within a hybrid, if you took Wyndham Primary School and now you're splitting that population in half, so instead of 800 students, you have 400 students coming on a given morning, I would be willing to bet already that we have 150 to 200 cars that are already transporting as it is. So some of those traffic things then start to lessen as you start to reduce the population. Interesting, just some of the things that I've been reading, and even some of the national and international models. Hybrid models are never meant to be a goal. Hybrid models are meant to be a means in order to be able to transition, whether it be a school, a community, or an organization, towards full in-distance or full in-person instruction, learning as a transition point. And to make a recommendation that we are 100% ready to bring everybody back and make that transition, I can't make that recommendation. But moving forward, putting things into place for a hybrid where we're bringing 50% and then looking at transitioning in the future, that is something that I'm much more comfortable making that recommendation to you as a superintendent. And so I know we'll have a chance for some public input and some other people to kind of weigh in on this, but I just really wanted to come back to this. And again, that's based on some of the challenges that we've talked about. But again, a hybrid should not be your end goal, and it should not be the model that you're obtaining. It should be, how do we use this to transition and move an organization to a different form of schooling than what we've had in the past. So some next steps for us
And I used to think next steps was next month, but it seems like our reality has become next steps are 2 days from now as we get additional guidance, as some of our school partners are working, creating some videos and welcomes to students and families. I think one of the biggest questions that people have gotten or have given me is, great, you're going to put all these things in place, but what does it look like for my student? What's a day of school look like? And I've heard that from staff members as well. What's it going to look like for me in my classroom interacting with students? And so what are some ways that we can show that through video? We'll continue to update our plan. We're supposed to receive some guidance on transportation. We're supposed to have had it last Thursday, hoping for tomorrow. In addition, waiting on some contact tracing guidance, some more specific things that I'll be meeting with the nurses on Friday, and looking at to continue to build that school reopening plan so that it's as robust as possible. We believe that it's important to share information with the community as often that we can. One thing we've tried to do in our communication, because I've seen districts that have sent something out and then 2 or 3 weeks have then pulled it back and said, no, we're going to do a different direction, that when we put something out that we have then said, this is something that we're going to stay with, and we're positive ahead in that direction. So we want to make sure the community has that information, preparing those staff and students for signage, cleaning. We're working on maximum occupancy determinations for some spaces. And Mike Kelly, looking at what does transportation look like, given who we now know may be coming to school, who may not be coming to school, and what possible route plans that are there. So I know we've covered a tremendous amount, and again, I just want to say thank you to the 50-plus people who've worked on components of this plan, all with the #1 goal and aim of how do we help transition our students and staff back safely as we work towards in-person instruction. And if that's the one common theme that I've heard from everybody is I want to be back, I want to be able to be back with my kids, but I also want to do it safely. And so here's the guidance that we received, here's what we're going to implement, and now is a chance for board members and also I know for some community input as to components of the plan, and I'll turn it back over to you, Janie.
Okay. If you would like to comment or ask a question, if you're in the public, we'd love to have you do that. I guess I would say if you would raise your hand and so I can tell you to come down one at a time, and if you are speaking, please identify yourself and tell us what town you represent or school, and I guess that's it. If you would like to speak, let me know. Oh, I'm on the board.
Sorry,
yeah.
you guys can go first.
Did somebody raise their hand? I can't tell. Yep. Come down. If you were in school, you'd be in trouble.
Hi, Dave Collins. I actually got a few questions. I was taking notes as we were going along. The first one is about the ABAB, and Mr. Howell mentioned extra genders during the day and cleaning and sanitizing. What about at the end of the day, cleaning between the two different groups, both times?
We're having the Zoom.
All of the above, Dave, was your question, which is extra cleaning during the day, but then additional sanitizing at night. I think also one of the advantages to having a Friday cleaning was that you could then leave the building quiet for the weekend and have that opportunity to do that cleaning portion. But one of the things that we've also talked about is that you have students entering hand sanitizing, going everywhere hand sanitizing. That in itself helps to reduce some of the transmission through those hard areas. In addition, masks are a requirement, and that also helps as well.
as far, going back to, you just kind of touched on it a little bit more, is the buses. We live on Forbes Lane, which is one of the fullest bus routes, I believe, in the district. It's, when it's full, it's full. And so even at 40% and you split it up to 2 different days, with junior high and high school, it's still going to be extra people up. I mean, how is that going to be handled? Are there going to be extra buses, extra runs, because they have to be cleaned between each run?
So, and it's a great question, and one of the things we were talking about today. First of all, having 40% of people committing to taking their kids to school every day will be helpful in that burden. Also, in a hybrid model, reducing the population in half will help with that burden as well. But in some of our areas, and even the challenges with some of our daycares, we may be sending more than one bus to a place that one bus used to go to.
Extracurriculars. You mentioned sports, but drama, choir, other clubs, has that been thought about how those going to happen?
We're meeting at 2 o'clock tomorrow with Dr. Nickerson on that exact topic, on especially with choir, and then also I noticed Rob's here tonight for theater. There'll be a lot of impact with theater, and there's been some guidance that actually Rob shared with me from National Theater. Rob, I'm trying to remember the name of the group. What he said. What he said, who have some guidance with that. I think one of the challenges that we're all coming up with is singing and how to make that happen. But yes, there need to be other activities that take place that students have options to. I mean, we have also to remember that our students have only had the chance to participate in some activities that are school-related virtually since March. We know that part of school, in addition to the academics, is that chance to interact with peers. And we want to make sure it's done safely and they have those opportunities.
And just one more. I know, obviously I'm not a teacher, but we have friends that are teachers in the district. What is, other than giving them masks and providing PPE, is there anything else? What are we doing for them if they don't feel safe?
So that's actually was covered under the Corona relief and is very specific under types of leave that staff members can take for COVID-related activities. And yes, you'll have staff members who would qualify for those, and then there are staff members who have had conversations that say, you know what, I may want to take a year off and not teach. The other thing we're taking a look at also is that we have 10% of our students who would like to be 100% online, and so using those staff members that don't feel comfortable or who have other medical conditions to be able to provide an education for those students and doing it virtually.
Thank you.
We'll now take a Zoom question.
Sure.
Lauren, did you have a question?
Maybe she could put it in the chat box.
If Zoom participants could put it in the chat box, that would be helpful, and I'll start reading questions right from the chat box.
Okay, do we have someone else? I have. Oh, okay. We'll take one of them and then we'll get back.
The question here from the chat box, on the hybrid model, what is the expectation for the 2 off days? Will the students have assignments to complete? And will parents be expected to provide guidance to students on off days? Sure. So regarding that question, the expectation for the off days, there is not a distance technology use expectation on off days, as teachers will be teaching in-person instruction. So students might have follow-up work at home, packets, math problems, something that's been assigned that does not require the use of technology, or synchronous instruction, because the teacher, again, is in the classroom teaching. Would the parents be expected to provide guidance to students on off days? Depending on the age of the student and the need for support, they may need additional adult support to complete that sort of homework, if you will, on the off days.
We're live now. Kelly?
Hi there, my name is Kelly Crockett, and I am a fifth grade teacher going into my 20th year at Jordan Small Middle School. I am not a resident of Wyndham or Raymond, but have a pretty vested interest in how this goes. And my question is around substitutes, which has always been a struggle anyway, but let's say my class, my group of students, and myself need to be quarantined for 14 days because we have a positive case. What happens with my other group and a substitute that comes in and the kids that are home? Is that something that's been thought about or talked about yet?
I'll go ahead and answer. Yes, it's been something that's been talked about, and we will be looking to increase subpay to try to encourage individuals to come and work within the district. But yes, it's a concern.
One of the questions here from the Zoom participants, what does 100 virtual look like? I'm assuming that means 100% virtual or distance instruction. As Christine Hessler mentioned, there would be much more guidance, and there was information used from the surveys sent out at the end of the school year. We've used that to create more transparency and more clarity for families, and many more resources for educators to engage students in a distance model. The next question is, will the school be opening up earlier to accommodate the staggered way that kids will be arriving at school? Will they be opening up, say it again?
In the morning, they're talking about opening school before 8.
Oh, earlier in the morning. Will school be, there is no talk at this time. Mr. Howell, do you want to answer that?
I will actually, for those students who are engaged in school-age childcare, that service would be available prior to the start of school, so that students can come in and be with somebody, and whether or not they need to then go into a bus or go across the street or wherever it is that they end up, but that would be an available option for students.
I'm going to ask Anna, did you have a question?
I have a couple, but I don't mind waiting.
Okay. Becca?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Cole. I teach first grade at Wyndham Primary School. I am a resident of Wyndham. I am the president of Sebago East Shore EA and a member of the Maine Education Association Board of Directors. And I have a couple of questions that I may have asked you already, Chris, but I've asked you so many, I hope you'll bear with me. The first one is, it's kind of a piggyback on Kelly's regarding quarantine during a hybrid situation. If we're quarantined because a student in one, say my A group, is diagnosed or has a family member who's diagnosed or something like that, would both sessions then be quarantined or only the students in that first session?
Maine CDC has specific designations, and I can get those to you as far as what actual close contact means and when students need to quarantine and when they don't. So we would use that as a guidance so that individuals who had close contact would be asked to quarantine. Those that did not, we'd follow CDC guidance on that. But I can get that to you, Becca.
Thanks. My next question is, what are the criteria you'll be using for determining a possible return to 100% remote learning? I know we're using the CDC guidance, but there is flexibility for individual districts to make that determination outside of those guidelines. So I wonder if you can speak a little bit about that.
First of all, I can't see myself making the decision on my own as far as when it's time to come back. And I would envision the governance committee, as well as other members of the administrative team and the school committee, having an opportunity to hear feedback as to how are we doing as a district, is this working, and then making the determination to go forward. I know there's some districts around us that have, the district I live in has actually given a date of the 3rd week of October that they'd be looking to make a decision on transitioning from a hybrid model to full in-person. Others have said, 1st of October we take a look at this. but I would imagine that would be something that governance, the board, the A team, that we'd want to take a look at. How is this all working? Are we meeting our goals? And then do we feel like that we can safely do that? The other piece to this, Becca, is we still have space requirements that would need to be looked at, as well as transportation requirements in order to do that. And again, are the social distancing, safety precautions, are all those things happening the way that we hoped that they would and that they needed to?
Thank you. And my final question is regarding cohort sizes. In a conversation with 2 pediatricians from Maine who happen to be leaders in our state affiliate of the American Academy of Pediatrics, they emphasize the importance of small cohort sizes, and I'm just wondering if that will be maintained. Certainly, it's a little easier, I think, at the elementary level, but I'm wondering how that will be maintained for students in both middle schools and the high school.
So as far as, I'll go the middle level where you have teams. The cohorts would be smaller because you'd be automatically splitting them in half over the teachers that would be there. Wyndham High School now is looking at schedules and even reducing the number of classes to go. My last conversation with Ryan and Pam, you guys may have had a different conversation this week, so correct me if I'm wrong, but looking at even reducing the number of classes to reduce the number of interactions that students are having. And of course, it's escaping me right now, we're a 4x4 schedule, so looking at opportunities within that to reduce those sizes. And but there are also there's also some guidance out there, which is saying K-5 that the cohorts can be a little bit larger, but I think it's a transition to then go with a smaller cohort because it's a teaching opportunity. It's also an opportunity for everyone to get used to new safety protocols.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions?
Trying to keep up, there's comments.
Okay. So. Barb? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go first.
There's a question here regarding, will Wednesday still be early release days? And the answer is no. The other question is, will we learn the survey results by building for question number 7? So that's in regards to intentions of keeping children home for distance, remote instruction versus sending their children in whatever model. We will send survey results out as soon as possible.
Barb?
Hi, I'm Barb Murray. I am a former staff member at Manchester School and now a very happily retired person. So thank you for having this tonight. It was helpful. I know that I had requested to see this information online because I have no children or grandchildren in the school system now. So this was very helpful, and I thank you all for making that happen. I was happy to see that students will not be penalized for missing school. I would ask that the same consideration be made for staff members. When I looked at the flow chart, it looked like it was the regular however many sick days you have, and then anything after that is unpaid. If there is a quarantine situation because of a student in a classroom and the teacher has to quarantine, I would suggest that there be no harm, no foul to that teacher. So,
Barb, if I can just, there are some provisions under the Corona Relief Act that provide prior to a staff having to access their sick time.
Okay, even in a quarantine situation, not when they're personally? Okay. Is that on the flow chart on the right side?
It's in the complete plan, which I think was posted fully to the website last night.
It's page 8 on the plan that's on the website.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you. We just got our power back at 5:30 tonight, so I didn't study last night. I do have a question in regard to the air filtration. Particularly in my old school of Manchester School, We all know that there are some classrooms, in particular at Manchester, that do not have access to windows. They include special ed classes. They have included Title I previously, and of course the media center, the library, has no access. So first of all, not that I'm dubious about the air ventilation, but I know the last year that I was there, we put a ribbon up in our room and it never moved all year. And Bill was seeing that there was air movement on his master control. But what are the safeguards that are there to ensure that the ventilation is actually working as we hope it to?
Barb, that's something that, and the question for those of you who are on Zoom, they can't hear me, can they, on Zoom? Can you recap the question, then I'll answer for Barb? I'll go ahead and answer for you, Barb, which is,
They can hear you.
perfect. I'm going to actually stand over here and answer you, so
Okay.
I can do that. I'm
Yep.
going to get on my knees right here.
You know what? Whatever it takes. You don't have to kneel before me all the time, but now is good.
The question you ask is something that I'd want to loop Bill in because this has been a project that he's been working on. The other building, you mentioned Manchester, but the other building being Wyndham Middle School,
Yeah.
which has one of the oldest set of windows and ventilation system, and there's been some significant upgrades put in to support that building. In fact, having operating windows, for those of you who ever worked at Wyndham Middle School, that was a luxury. Because many of them were broken, so that piece. But let me, I'll connect with Bill, and I'd be happy to send that to you via email.
Okay, that sounds great. Is it I understood in my quick perusal of everything before I lost the power, that a set number of masks will be provided to staff, and that the students, will they also receive masks, or are they expected to bring them from home?
Both. So we will be asking families to provide masks, and I know I'll speak for my own child who is heading to Greeley with his mask. He preferred to actually have ones that he picked out versus ones that would be supplied by the school. But we will have additional ones that will be available for those students who do not have them. Because if we want to return to school, everyone has to wear a mask.
Right. And I was happy to hear about the picnic table staffing. And of course, that would have to be sanitized between lunches and that as well. But the opportunity for particularly the younger children to have the mask breaks created another scenario in my head that I started twitching a little bit, in that when they take those masks off, where are they going, and how sanitary are they going to be when they put them back on? Or if they get them on inside out, upside down, or someone has a sneeze that is quite productive with whatever. So that's an I wonder that I continue to be concerned about. So I'm not sure how many masks are appropriate to be able to go through in a day for some of these kiddos. And understanding that if they have sniffles or cold systems, they are not going to be in the school, but I know sometimes a hearty sneeze produces things that we don't want to have on the mask. And then my last question is, it's my understanding that there is a 3-foot student distance when in the classroom, and then a 6-foot for the adults. Did I get that correct? Has there been any consideration on the 16, 17, 18-year-olds, 15-year-olds that are adult-sized in the, whether that should be a 3-foot or a 6-foot?
I can only go by what CDC has advised us, but I would be happy to ask that question. I meet with the commissioner every Thursday afternoon at 3. I'd be happy to ask for some guidance on that and send that out.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Good to see you guys. I wasn't going to come, but the Zoom was like, it was nasty earlier.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Pam Carter. I am a Wyndham resident. Proudly had 4 of my children go through our school system. Have worked as a teacher at Wyndham High School for 26 years. I have grave concerns about going back to school. I think the number of things and the shifting science is really scary. I have spoken with some of my colleagues and I have presented to the board a number of these concerns, some of which are addressed in the information that we have tonight, but others are not. And I have an updated and endorsed or signed off on by a few of my colleagues letter that I will be sharing electronically with you at the end of this meeting. But some things that really concern me. Just looking at the board right now, we can see there's a huge diversity of opinions about masks. Not everyone has one on. Not everyone has worn one the entire time. Not everyone has worn them covering their nose and their mouth. I think given that, how do we expect that of our kids? I think you can tell from the questions that we've had. I have a microphone here. But if I was speaking on my own, I can't project my voice in the way I normally do, which is going to limit direct instruction. Being 6 feet away from my students means that, for the most part, I'm going to be proctoring them learning online at their own devices in the way that they would at home. If I were instructing from home, I could have my mask off, they could see me, I could use my time to create meaningful, engaging curriculum. And I feel like right now, all of my time is being spent trying to figure out how to keep myself safe. And I've seen that online in the Facebook groups that are nationwide that have to do with teaching, where teachers have, prior to 2 weeks ago, were sharing tons of resources and ideas about how to create meaningful curriculum for kids. That has switched entirely to fear and concern and questions and posts about the shifting science. And I have real concerns about whether or not I appreciate all the work that's been put in. There are so many things to think about. And you've certainly covered a ton of things, you know? I don't mean to in any way denigrate the hard work and the decision that this board has to make. I would not want to be in your position. Some things I'd like you to think about are, what will the classrooms actually look like that the kids are going into? And I would like to invite board members into my classroom at any point during the process. I think the first few days of school are probably going to look different than 2 weeks in, than a month in. And I think it's important, if you're able, to be able to go out there and actually look at what's going on in our classrooms. I have concerns about parents who send their kids to school thinking instruction is going to look one way, and then it's not the way they expected, and then they want to switch their kids to online only because they realize that they actually are getting a meaningful education instead of a proctor kind of sitting masked away from them. I hope that you'll consider the diversity of issues and know that we really do want to get back face-to-face with our kids, but it's a big ask to put it on teachers to do all the professional development necessary. to access the resources that Christine and others have gathered. Where's the time for that? Some districts have decided to postpone the start of school in order to give teachers time to come into school in small groups and work on that. And to do that PD, to make those curriculum changes that need to be made to ensure that the curriculum is engaging and meaningful, and address some of Marge's questions about the role of parents on those off days, making those off days also meaningful. And I think staff really want to have that time. So I hope that you'll give some consideration to possibly building in more. I appreciate the 2 days that got shifted from last year. I fear that that won't be enough. I also have questions around quarantining and who gets quarantined and when, and substitutes. Those are big, big issues. If one child in a family is quarantined, is the entire family quarantined? Are all the students in that family quarantined? If so, that could mean if the virus went through a family, one person after another, that that whole family could be out of school for a long time. You know, that's a lot of 2-week periods back to back. So I hope we have a plan to think about those things, to think about making sure that teachers not only have physical things that they need, but also the time to make this a good experience for our students. And a whole host of other issues. And I'm sorry, I'm just a little emotional and worked up. I have a huge investment in this. And I really care passionately about our kids. And I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Do we have a Zoom question or 20?
There's a question here regarding social distancing. So what are we going to do to enforce social distancing in classrooms, specifically kindergarten? Or if children aren't wearing masks, will they be allowed to interact normally? So there have been many concerns expressed about how do we enforce the spacing needed and mask compliance. I was responding earlier in the chat that we want to build in frequent breaks where masks are off, where people head outside and children learn to make sure that they're still social distancing, but that they have those opportunities to play and interact and have masks off, and learning how to wear the mask and or shield when they're in the classroom. And there will be a need for frequent breaks and lots of modeling to support them, especially our younger learners.
Someone else?
Hi, my name is Michelle Jordan. I have 2 students in high school, and I'm also an ed tech in the special ed program at the primary school. I have a couple of questions and a couple of comments. My first question is could you explain what the Fridays will look like, the expectations for both students and staff? I know it says it would be all remote, but what does that actually mean? Is there assignments to be completed, Zoom meetings to do? And I'm guessing that for those of us who are typically a half-day employee on Wednesdays or a 2-hour short employee, that could shift to Friday. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. I'll start first of all with Fridays, is that we do need a common planning day, a chance for staff members. Ms. Carter had it perfectly right. There needs to be an opportunity for staff members, even within a hybrid schedule, to be able to meet together. So some of that would happen as well. It would be a work day for students, that previously assigned work that they would be doing. It may also be an opportunity for staff to check in with students and families, to catch up with correspondence, to connect with them, much like in the spring of where we had that. As far as hours go and the way that we use some of those support staff hours, we're meeting on Monday to discuss some of that because we may have to shift some hours around to help support dismissal and arrival times, which then would shorten the week on Friday.
So I guess sort of along those lines, do you imagine some of the questions around substituting, potentially shifting support staff like ed techs and things like that to help in those roles as well? Yeah. And then I'll just kind of comment along, I have an incoming freshman and a senior. Those are two really huge transition years. As a parent and a staff member, I'll say that I'm fully supportive of a hybrid environment. I think that Maine has done a good job following the science. That's what we keep being told to do, follow the science. And I think that I appreciate the work that's been done because I do think that's what we're continuing to do to make the right next steps to work towards getting our kids back in school. So I just hope that there's also consideration, because schools, as been brought up, is not just about the education part, but some of the transitions. So I hope that there'll be some work. My freshman has had no high school transition time, and my senior has had poor harassment from his mother of looking for colleges all summer. So I also hope that there's a real effort for some guidance, virtual support for our high school students throughout this year, because I think we really lost that in the spring. So I just would like to kind of comment that maybe not just at the high school, but in a lot of the other buildings, but because my kids are high schoolers, that's the part that I see. So I just think that we need to make sure we're taking that into consideration as well. I mean, he's had no support on what we could have been doing all summer for college searching. We've done a lot, but that's because of what we've initiated in our home, and I worry for a lot of our kids that they didn't have that same support. So I'll just kind of make that comment as well. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. How are we doing, Christine? Do we have
I'm
another-
answering them as they
Okay.
Hi, Courtney Post-Vandenberg here. I'm standing here as a parent and as a support staff member at the high school. One of the things that my children going into 3rd grade and 8th grade this year have talked about is every 2 weeks there's going to be an evaluation of the schools and our colors that we were talking about. If we go to a red in 4 weeks, and then 2 weeks after that, so we've gone back to total distance, and then in 2 weeks they said, oh no, you can go back to school. Are we going to be doing this back and forth thing, or are we going to have a plan set in place where, okay, if we go virtual, we're going to wait so long before we come back? Do we have any? That was kind of a question, if it can be answered now.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that. So first of all, if a district's put into red in that category, then the assumption is it's an immediate transition, as quickly as possible, to going into a distance learning format. I think the transition between yellow and green can be done at a pace that actually makes sense for the district and makes sense for how classes might be. And so for instance, at the high school level, where if number of classes are reduced and then there's the expectation that other classes then get all the extra time, that transition happens so that we have those opportunities. The other thing which people have brought up, and which is a great discussion, is that Monday holidays. And so making sure that students who are in a Monday, Wednesday cohort receiving the same number of minutes of instruction, which for board members, that means that for those of you who love talking about calendar, we do need to take a look at the calendar to make some adjustments, because either moving around some professional development days so that those days that would be impacting those cohort groups could be done. So we'll be coming forward with some recommendations for that. It's a great question.
Thank you. And my other kind of question or comment is actually more directed towards Lisa. Working in special ed and some of the students I work with, I need to be less than 3 feet away from my student to give them what they need. I work with a lot of hard of hearing students. I just didn't know how that was going to be addressed for special ed.
Courtney, those are great questions. And so I actually was on a meeting today with Aaron Fraser and directors across the state. So this information will be coming out shortly as well, but the PPE that Chris talked about that we're all going to have, we're going to have lots of options in special ed. So the CDC is currently working on guidance for students who receive special ed services who their staff needs to be less than 3 feet apart. There are some specific PPE requirements that we're going to have to follow, but the school district will provide those. I think everybody has a different comfort level with masks and shields, so we have a variety of face masks that are actually clear and go between your ears. I've been working with the folks from the Maine Education Center for Hard of Hearing over in the former Baxter School. It's on Ackworth Island. They've been a great resource, so I've purchased some different type of shields. So Chris ordered one kind. We have ordered some that go around your neck that go up. And then we are also, I just looked at another model today that is a full shield, and now there's like a cloth covering down for staff and students. So we're exploring all kinds of those options as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier during my presentation, we're really going to be looking at what are the results of the staff survey, who's comfortable returning to work, who's more comfortable being or needs to be home to do remote learning, how many of our students that get services will be home, and then really trying to match up student needs with staff needs and really trying to be as flexible as we can within that. But then also, there will, how you've done your job in the past may differ a little, because if your kids are coming on an AB schedule and your kids don't come on a B day, what are you going to do? So those are all things for site coordinators. I see Marissa in the background, not paying attention to me, but we're going to be meeting, and that's where we're going to really start to look at student by student and having some conversations about what that will look like. So I wish I could tell you now, but hopefully within the next couple of weeks, by the time we get our new color, whatever that might be, I'll have very specific guidance for what folks are going to be able to do.
Great. And my last question was, I know that there was a lot around, not really discipline, but students who refuse to wear a mask or keep taking their mask off. And I go back to special ed, those students, 5 and 4's IEP plan. What's going to be the plan for that? Are we going to hold them and the parents to the same standard as, somebody who I can't even get to wear a hat in the wintertime because they can't stand wearing a hat? They don't want to wear their mask. Are we going to say, okay, parents, you have to come get your child?
I'll answer that in 2 ways. One is that if it's a student with an IEP, then the IEP team should come together and make a decision about what works for that student for PPE and what's going to meet the requirements of that component. I've also received the question about someone who doesn't have an accommodation and just outright refuses. There is statute that allows a superintendent, and of course that allows them to exclude students from school who present a health risk to other individuals. And so we would have to exclude a student from school until they are willing to comply with that CDC guidance. If it's an outright refusal, I'm not going to do this. As Christine mentioned, part of this is teaching, but then part of it is, someone just outright refuses. So that would be that component.
I'm Marissa Washburn. I'm a parent here in the district, but I'm also an employee at Wyndham Primary School. Lisa called me out. I had talking about my question out loud. So I have a question around the alphabetical split. I know you guys are still getting the results of that on who's going to keep their child home and who's coming to school. But if we have kids in classrooms and it's not a nice even split, I start thinking about staffing, and are we going to have enough staff to cover if we have more kids coming on Monday and Wednesday that are A through K versus kids that are L through W, and how we're going to cover that staff-wise so that staff don't feel like, God, on Mondays and Wednesdays I have so many more kids that I'm trying to socially distance, but on Tuesdays and Thursdays this is great because I only have 4 kids in my classroom. So is there any consideration of flexibility? Placement letters have already gone out. We as parents already know who our kids are going to have. Is there going to be flexibility per building if, say, you know, Becca Cole gets her list and it isn't a nice even split on those days? Or is it really set in stone because we've already put it out to the community that these are the days you're going based on your alphabet and your last name?
I'll gladly take this. I've learned this pandemic that there's nothing set in stone. So to the extent that we can be flexible to make sure that our cohorts are balanced. In addition, Marissa, I think going to your question, we also know that there are families that have different last names and that we need to make sure that their needs are accommodated as well. So yes, flexibility will always be flexibility. I cannot promise at this time, though, that we're not going to have to move a student here and there in order to make sure that, as Becca talked about earlier, that we're maintaining those cohorts of appropriate size and that are manageable size. I guess for me, what it ultimately comes down to is that I'd like to see us do a back to school and do it well so that we can continue to move towards that where we don't have to worry about alphabetically each day and that we have everybody A to Z. And that we've properly contained, we have our procedures in place, and we can move towards that. But yes, there's going to need to be some flexibility in just around those manageable sizes. And building administrators have been discussing it and trying to make that happen. But again, much of it has been dependent upon that survey that went out so that we can mine the data starting tomorrow as far as who's coming, who's not coming, and how to make that split because it impacts so many different things.
Do you have a question? Yes.
Am I correct in here, I'm kind of confused on the shields versus the match. Shields are mentioned. When you have elementary versus high school when a student I can see wearing a mask, are the younger kids allowed to wear shields?
I'll go right to the CDC guidance, and I won't put it up there though, but it's CDC wants people wearing masks. And so to the extent whether there may be a behavior reason, a medical condition, or other accommodations that's necessary because the person physically cannot wear a mask because it might be a respiratory or some other pre-existing condition, then shields are acceptable. But even within those shields, there are specific distances of which it must cover. CDC would love us to have masks, but there's also some flexibility that's there.
Susan Brackett I live in Raymond and I teach 4th grade at Raymond Elementary School. I have a student at Jordan Small or a child at Jordan Small and a child also at the high school. So we've talked a lot about masks and you talked about if kids refuse to wear them that, you know, they'll be sent home. But I'm wondering what will happen there's many parents that don't want their child wearing them, and it doesn't have anything to do with a disability. Will it be treated the same way?
There's no exception for parents. And unfortunately, and I'll go in a different direction, unfortunately this has become, instead of a medical discussion in the communities, but it's gone to a different place. But as far as what we're required, in order to be able to open, we have to require that people wear masks. In addition, there are funds that have been allocated to the district to help, because no one's asked tonight, how are we paying for all this? That's unbudgeted. There's been financial commitment by the federal government to support us with that. One of the conditions to sign off on receiving those funds is the mask. So it's an underscored piece through all the different legislative parts to continue to do that. And I do know that people don't agree with it, and I've received emails about that, but if we want to open as a district, whenever we get that chance, it's got to be with masks.
Also wondering if you know, you said you won't be making a decision tonight. Do you have any idea when you will be making a final decision for what the start of school will look like?
It's kind of an interesting process here because the board adopts the plan in And basically, with the board adopting the plan, they sign off on, we agree to these medical conditions and things that need to be put into place. And we think that you've covered those items that are necessary, and there have been some questions tonight that will update the plan. So they're voting on that plan. The purpose of the plan is to then guide the district as things change, as to what's going to happen. I think you've already heard from me tonight, and I know the board has not had a chance to weigh in. State of Maine said that we could open as green, and that's not my recommendation. So that would be an opportunity, I think, for the board to weigh in and whether or not they agree with that assessment. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Also, I know a lot of the older kids bring their laptops back and forth, and but at the elementary level, they were allowed to when we did the distance learning. With kids coming on Monday and Wednesday and Tuesday and Thursday, I'm wondering if the elementary kids are also going to be able to bring home their laptops or iPads or.
It's a question that we've not finalized yet, because I've heard arguments for both that are really good.
Right.
But we do know that staff, when they're here with kids, they need to have the technology available as well. And so probably leaning more towards the technology staying in school. And I think another piece of feedback that we heard from family members is that it felt like kids were spending a lot of time on tech on some of those days, and so how can we as a district promote other things that students can do on those off days? They'd be doing the reinforcement pieces, but there's also going to be time that kids can be engaged in other activities.
And then my final question is about materials. So if we're not using technology as much and we're providing some different paper and pencil packet worksheets type of work, you know, as a teacher, I'm going to be collecting those, looking at those. They're all going to be touching each other, and then I'm handing them back. I'm just wondering if there's been some thought about how that's going to work.
Yes, this is why some of us are not sleeping well, because these are the things that we're thinking about. So first of all, as family letters go out, we're going to need to underscore that kids are going to need to have their own materials, and to the extent which kids can't provide their own materials, we as the district need to provide those things. I think what's going to be a challenge in classrooms is that what's your materials or the things that you should be using and the materials that I should be using. Same thing goes with specialists who may need to travel to classrooms or may need to have students come in, but that those are the materials that are then handed. There's some questions that come up about library books. And I'll double check on this, but from what I've read, library books and paper is not a great vector for virus transmission. I think it also underscores the importance of hand sanitizer, hand washing in classrooms to reduce that transmission as work's passed back and forth. But it's a great question, and we'll get some guidance out there about paper.
Thank you.
Someone else?
Hello, I'm Aaron Piper. I have a son in the primary school, and I just had some questions about not just him, but other kids that might be thriving in school, but there might be some areas where they're falling behind. They might need that one-on-one, or they might not be able to do it because of the distancing. Our teacher's going to be letting the parents know, what's happening in case like they need a parent to help them on a specific thing, or just a little more time on a particular subject.
I couldn't hear the first part, Aaron. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
We could probably raise that microphone for you as well.
Is this better?
Much better.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. So there might be some kids that are thriving in school and in their class, but there might be some subjects or just small areas where they're just not catching it on as fast as other students. And in the past, teachers were probably able to do some closer one-on-one or walk up to the desk and help them a little bit more. Is that still going to be the case, or are they going to be notifying the parents to maybe like, can you help, focusing on this? They're doing really well. It's just they're stumbling in this one section or this one part. How are the parents going to be notified? And I know I don't want to put all on the staff, because I know, they have a lot of students, and they're not able to do it all during the the school day because of the distancing. So just how is that being handled?
Christine, you want to talk about some of the RTI work that's been happening?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. We're currently working with other educators across the state, and we are revamping our RTI plan and providing supports for students. That also includes our academic interventionist, our Title I staff. We're going to be doing those pieces in order to support your students in any function that we have to. And so I've been really pleased that the Department of Education has also been offering some series of how to provide interventions for kids, whether they're in distance or they're in person. And so know that our team is working together to make sure that we support our kids all the way through. But it's going to probably look a little different based on these guidelines that we have, but we have the staff, and they're really willing to help our kids when we do this piece. So it's another layer of our puzzle right now. So. Absolutely, and I think that's a huge communication with our parents, especially with our littles at primary and at RES. Here's some things you can assist them to do at home to reinforce. Here's a skill I feel that they need a little bit more work on. And so it may be an email, could be a message on Seesaw for our younger students and our parents. Here's what we're working on, and that's a key for you guys to also assist us from home. That would be great. And we're hoping the two suites that I shared with you for hybrid and for distance, we really wanted to help ensure that there's a clear schedule for parents so they know what time students are working or what time there is that additional support available for you. So we're working on those pieces for you. You're welcome.
Looking for another hand.
Hello, I'm Jen Potter. I live in Windham. I have a son who will be a sophomore. I'm a recent high school graduate, and I teach at Jordan Small Middle School. So I might have an incorrect understanding of teacher travel after August 1st, but then it leads into a question about family travel. So if teachers travel to a state that's not considered a safe state from the Maine CDC or the Governor Mills, that we have to quarantine as teachers, will families be required to do the same thing? So if they decide to take a family trip to a state that's considered a hot state, will they need to quarantine for 14 days before their children are allowed back into the classroom? So if you can clarify for me.
I can actually answer it because it was discussed in one of my meetings this week, which is CDC guidance currently does not apply to students 18 and under for that rule.
Okay.
It applies to adults.
Good to know. Okay, and then my next is a comment or a plea for you all to really consider the arts and a way for the arts to happen for our children, because they are so important. They are the lifeline for so many children to make it through elementary school, middle school, and high school. That put your heads together, and I know there's wonderful teachers at the high school and every school, but please, please, please don't let the arts fall away from this learning. It's really, really important. So thank you for your time.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up question to what she just asked?
Yeah.
And Chris, you might be able to answer this, maybe you can't, but the school reopening plan, on page 3, under the health and safety guidelines for all staff, before returning to work, employees who have left Maine, footnote number 1, beyond states of the current executive order, since July 1, must provide a negative COVID-19 test or a test that they have sufficiently quarantined, due to what you were saying there. After August 1, travel outside Maine must be reported in advance to your immediate supervisor. That got me thinking, so I went and looked at footnote number 1, and what it says here is that it is exempt for travel to New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey. That makes zero sense to me. Why is New York exempt? Why is New Jersey exempt? I also noticed that Mass is not exempt.
I can answer that.
Can you get some clarification on that?
I can answer that, actually.
Oh,
And the reason I can is because I have a bed and breakfast.
okay.
And those states have a lower incidence of new cases, and except for Massachusetts, Massachusetts cases are higher. So anybody coming from those states, now I don't know what the newest guidance is on New Jersey, since New Jersey's cases have increased exponentially since then. But
So it's number of new cases since July 1?
that's what the CDC recommends,
Okay,
the
because
main CDC.
when I went to the CDC earlier today, and I got some numbers to take a look. Massachusetts has got the lowest rate out of all of those. So that's what doesn't make any sense to me. So I understand that these are guidances coming
Right.
down from the CDC, but I'm just curious if these have changed.
And the other thing, Scott, is just add is that portions of that packet are now 3 weeks old, and
Okay.
will continue to be updated. I think what we would ask,
It does
though-
say draft in big giant
Yes.
red letters across the top.
and I think that we would ask that employees who would be traveling because of, we know college things, and I think that's also why some districts have now pushed off some starting dates. But we know that individuals who are going to be dropping off kids at college, that we just ask that they have a conversation with their supervisor so to make sure that a proper plan's developed. And again, it goes back to what Marissa was talking about, which is flexibility, to make sure that everyone's aware of ahead of time what some of these restrictions are.
Right, okay.
Anna?
I mean, I think everybody's pretty much asked my questions. I do have one basic question. We keep talking about the questionnaire results. What's our total number of families in the district? Because we talk about how many have taken it, but we don't know of what number is that.
What we'll know is when we get to because part of the questionnaire was asking student names, once we have those student names and pull out any duplicate records, then we will have an idea of who has and who has not answered it. But yes, you may have you definitely have less families than you have students because of duplicate students that are within households.
I mean, I'm super guilty of that, so I get it.
So we'll have a chance to weed out some of that data. The other piece with the data is that we also want school administrators and counselors to have an opportunity to talk with families to help define what plans are, so that we're clear, because as we're looking to then look at our staffing, because if we have staff that can't return at an in-person, and I've had some staff members reach out that for medical reasons they can't do an in-person, but they'd be more than happy to do a distance, then how can we reassign and assign people so that they can continue to have that flexibility to do their passion, but do it a little differently.
Okay, Anna, you had another one?
Yeah, just, it completely went out of my mind right now, so I'll wait till after Kate can get
Okay.
it back in just a second, because I have like 5 pages of notes, so.
Okay.
I'll get there.
I know, was it Christina? Yeah, Christina?
I just, Scott's question kind of got me thinking, is it possible that we could ask staff to just inform us of all travel, even if it's not in a restricted area? Because we know that test results are like a 2-week lagging indicator. So if we end up with a case in school, it would help us with contact tracing. I don't know if there's privacy legality reasons about that, but I think that would be really helpful information to have, that if any of our staff have left the state, even if they don't have to quarantine, that we at least know where they've been, so that we could help if that, if something skyrockets and they have just been there, that we might need to be on the lookout.
Yeah, and there's also, just so everyone's in the room's aware, because I think it's an important thing for the educational community to know, is that there's been a push on the main CDC to include educational professionals in with healthcare professionals for priority for testing, so that we're not having those lag times when someone's out and they're actually not sick and then we're looking to cover a classroom. So adding them to the priority list. So that's something that continues to be hammered away at.
Kate, could you talk a little bit, I know we've changed the calendar to add a couple of days PD. Can you talk a little bit about what's included in that?
Sure. So some of you may know and some of you may not know that we took 2 years from 2 years.
It only seems like
Feels
that.
like 2 years.
We took 2 days from last year and moved them to this year for professional development days, knowing that we would need more for the start of school. Christine and Christine have been working on some of those professional development things and doing a professional development calendar of, and they're ignoring me at the moment, but okay.
So we have a variety of professional development offerings that we're working on pulling together. Not all for those opening days, but having a variety offered online for people anytime, anywhere learning, some in-person offerings, and a variety, much more choice-based, so that people can get their needs met. But we have anything from social emotional learning related topics, trauma-informed practices, how to utilize all the features of Seesaw for our pre-K through second grade teachers, Google Classroom for grades 3 through 12 features, making sure that people have what they need to use those online platforms. District instruction tools, when digital, as Christine spoke about earlier with the website offerings and lots of how-to videos. Math program, writing program, when digital, how to sort of take the district programs and in a distance platform, how to teach using those resources. Technology workshops for parents, to support parents if you have a child that's engaging in distance instruction. Specialized programs for special education services. And I'll turn it over to Christine.
So you'll also be seeing, as a staff member, we'll be offering some office hours from our tech integrators if people want to start doing some things before those 3 days. We have those great 3 days. I'm always in the position where people reach out and say, can I do something earlier? I want to just get a little bit more organized. So we're building them so you can access them at any time, and if you're not accessing or you don't want to, you can do those during the 3 workshop days that we do have before we come back. And we're looking very closely in working with our building administrators to give you what you need and what you feel comfortable with to go back. So it's going to be always evolving. It's going to be there for you when you need it, and you'll be able to access it through your grade levels and your buildings. So.
Yep. As we embark on whatever model we decide, I know you have it, so I shouldn't even ask this question. What are your thoughts on assessing, say, school starts, we're in a hybrid, what are your thoughts on getting feedback from parents and from staff as to how it's working? I mean, do you have kind of a timetable, or what are your thoughts on that?
So my initial thoughts is that I think we need to give everything at least 2 weeks. So the question was about garnering feedback after whatever model that we open in. How do we get that feedback to know how things are working for staff and for students and for families? And so I think we need to give it 2 weeks, and then we need to collect some data as far as things that we're doing well and things that we're not doing well, to take a look at things. The other thing that we would want to also take a look at, which is what are some of the challenges of things that we're facing. So whether or not we have an inability to cover classes, or we have an illness or something else, that looking at that data, and I think it's something that we'd want to continuously revisit the data, how things are going. In countries that have done a hybrid model to start, some of the initial findings have been that after about a month is when people finally get used to it. But what they also do find is that that's the point where people get used to the routines of mask wearing and hand sanitizing and social distancing and all these other components, that it takes about a month to get used to how to go through those elements.
Thank you.
Marge?
Yeah, Chris, I know we're hoping to, approve the plan in a couple of weeks. Before we do that, will we have, I know nothing's cast in stone, but will we have a generalized idea of what is going to happen with special ed, what is going to happen with the technical schools, and what is going to happen with the arts and everything that's related to that?
So I'll start with, first of all, special ed is that students, it is our goal that students who are most impacted by distance learning because of inability to access, that we can bring them in for greater than 2 days. And so Lisa's working on some planning pieces for that. So that would be one piece with special ed. For the vocational schools, right now they are looking at PATHs will be open, because PATHs actually has a different flex day. PATHs will be open all 5 days in Portland because they've got school districts that go across multiple towns across Cumberland County. So they've made that commitment to that. And I'm sorry, Marge, I forgot what the last...
But before we go on that one, with PATHs in Westbrook, I know a lot of the programs that they offer have certifications, et cetera, time that you have to expend there. And are students going to be able to do that? Because they have 5-day-a-week programs, so are our PATHs and our Westbrook students going to be able to do that? You don't have to answer that right now.
No, and I think it would be best to have some guidance from Kevin Stofan and from Todd Field as far as how they plan to meet those within those programs. I think that'd be best to get that information to the board for that.
Yeah. And the last one was the arts and associated. You said you had a meeting coming up with Nickerson. So would we have, those things, because, and there are people that are, a lot of people in a lot of the schools are involved in that at some level as, up at, because Jordan Small has these great plays, the middle school, high school, there's a lot of things, not counting just what Dr. Nickerson does. So for the arts in general, is there going to be a plan to somehow be able to see what we can do with that?
Yeah, and just so everyone is clear, and Lisa, or Christine, maybe you can put this in the chat. Any arts programming that happens during the day, we are looking for ways to replicate that during the day. There's no plan by this district to remove any of those elements out of our core programming. What we're looking at is what can we safely do for some of those extracurricular pieces that so many students become involved in, and then what does band and chorus look like?
Okay, thank you.
Pete?
Can you hear me way down here?
I can.
All right, I've got a few questions. The one that I thought of first is, it's been great that we've done the family questionnaire. Have we done the same thing for our staff? Have we surveyed our staff and found out, if given a choice, would you prefer to work remotely or to work in person? And have we given them that choice?
We've not sent out a specific survey to that extent. And I think part of it also is that we need to work through first the medical issues of staff who have, I guess the best way to put it, where that accommodation would be a legal thing that we would want to go ahead and pursue. So we want to check and make sure that we do that. Also, we will be sending that out because I think if you take 10% of our population, so that given what did the survey, we have 200 students that are looking for an online experience that we will then be going to staff members and asking who would be interested in participating in that format. But that would be their assigned class. So it would not be I'm teaching my AB group and then now there's the expectation that I'm teaching something different. It might be a class that's added part of a class load, but it's not an above and beyond. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's just, to me, there's a little bit of a disconnect between we're not asking families to prove a need or anything like that. We're just, it's a comfort thing on what do you want to do. And so I was just wondering if we're doing the same thing for the staff. But so that was one thing that I was wondering. In terms of contact tracing, we've touched on that tonight. Are we going to have our own contact tracing team, or if there is a positive test, are we going to refer to the CDC and let them do the contact tracing for us?
On July 17th, we were told that forthcoming guidance would be on contact tracing requirements for schools and how that would happen. Our nurses would be heavily involved with that. But what I would like to do is get the specifics of that guidance, which again, that's one of the topics for my meeting with the commissioner tomorrow, is what are the specifics. The other thing that I would be looking for also is some guidance on information that I can and can't share with the community should we have a case. And specifically, because if you're looking at classroom cohorts, and what's the notification procedure for those cohorts, that we are following all privacy rules, but then also we're getting people the information that we have. So contact tracing is also something that the nurses have been working on as far as how do they partner with the CDC, but not to the extent that I think we would want in a corona environment. Contact tracing they've done before would be for other outbreaks or for other things, but
okay.
We need some additional guidance.
Yeah, I mean, because one thing that is scary is we brought up the scenario earlier where there's a positive test, we're going to quarantine that classroom, but if that student took the bus, there were 25 other students who then have gone off to however various number of classrooms. So I'd be curious to get more information on that. And then along those lines as well is, do we have some sort of framework in terms of how many positive tests that there would need to be in a certain time frame before we would close the schools down?
We don't have a specific framework for that. Let me get back to you on that. Because I think what we should have is, and this was discussed in a meeting today amongst the superintendents, is that we'd all like to have a protocol for cases so that we're all acting in the exact same way. And that should there be positive case 1 or 2 or whatever, that we're all doing a consistent, whether it be a school closure, partial school closure, and that we're following those CDC guidelines. So something that we're actively working on together as a group, because again, as a county, we want to make sure that we're addressing the issue in the same way.
All right, my next one. All right, prior to the pandemic, we have a certain number of ed techs in our schools to support the school population. Now, if we go to a hybrid model and we have 90% of the students that are going to be in our schools over the course of half the time, so we're looking at basically 45% of our population. With the same number of ed techs, what are we going to be using them for? Is it going to be more per student support within the classroom, or is there an opportunity to have them support some of the kids that are at home during those off days? Because one of my concerns right now is that it seems like in a hybrid model, we've got 2 days of instruction, of in-person instruction, and then the other 3 days, the kids are kind of on their own without a lot of support, it sounds like. So is there an opportunity to use the ed techs as kind of online resources?
So can I let you?
Pete, if it was only that easy in special ed. So just so people know, in special ed, teaching is just one small component of it. We have IEP meetings that need to be held, assessments that need to be held, all kinds of stuff. And so I can only speak for the special ed techs, but again, it's going to be working in collaboration with the site coordinators and building administrators to really take a look at what is our obligation to provide special education services. And so our duty to provide FAPE to every family doesn't go away just because we're only providing services to all students on 2 days. So there may be students, and again, I'm just making this up off the top of my head, but we may have students who are in a remote model where they're, 2 days in and 2 days out, but they need to have instruction on the 2 days they're out in order for us to meet our obligation under their IEP. So we have to figure out how we're going to do that. So it could be a combination of it's a special ed teacher that's doing the remote, or it could be the special ed tech that's doing the remote. It's in part why we've tried to only hire ed tech 3s over the last few years, is because ed tech 3s can do lesson plans and provide direct instruction to students. So to fairly answer your question right now, my hope is that we're going to be team players with the special education staff, but our focus is going to be students first and meeting IEPs. Do you have any other questions about that?
No, I think that's good.
Okay.
And I will yield to somebody else at this point.
Anna.
What's our timeline look like? I think it was asked before, but I'm really sort of unclear, and I know that everything about this is unclear, so I do expect some lack of clarity. But what is our timeline? What are we looking at as a board for making a decision, voicing our opinions on, what we think we should go with, and voting on what we're going to go with, and getting it out to the community?
Do you want to take it?
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeannie.
No.
I like you both.
I would like to get out to the community as soon as possible that we are looking at a hybrid and here's what it would look like. I think parents need the opportunity to plan, and the green designation that we had on Friday was a bit of a surprise. And honestly, in the survey, I was hoping, which my hopes didn't come true, that we would end up with 50% wanting a distance option and 50% wanting in person. And then we could have accommodated that, but that's not something given that where we're at. So I think we need to get that communication out as soon as possible. I guess what I would be looking for the board would be, do you feel that we are not prepared to open fully? And do you feel that a hybrid is the best way to open, transitioning to green? Or do you feel that it's best that the guidance that you've heard and everything, is it best to then, you know what, let's just go ahead and open? Or do you feel like that we should just close down and start in that red? What we receive from guidance from Maine CDC is that the transmission rate is such that to the extent that districts feel like they can open, that they feel that the transmission rate is that you can open to that comfort level. And as I mentioned earlier, my recommendation that I'm not comfortable with a full open. I'm comfortable with transitioning students in and getting some groups of students in so we can start working on this process of getting people back and doing it safely. So that would be one component. And I guess the other question would be is that we do need to have an approved transition plan that we need to submit in minutes to the Department of Education that shows that we've planned out what red looks like, what green looks like, and what yellow looks like, and to make sure that we have something that's going to guide our decision making moving forward.
We're hoping to have a discussion, further discussion and vote, probably next school board meeting, which would be the 19th at Jordan Small.
And that one, we also have a presentation on the RSU withdrawal for that date as well? Did I make that up? It's very possible I made that up.
Yes, you did. Good.
Every day is Blur's Day right now, so I don't know what's happening.
Of course, we're also going to have another designation, color designation on the 14th. So that will play into any decision we make on the 19th.
I think one of the things that caught me tonight, I came in as a mom and as a community member that's gotten a lot of, I have all kinds of correspondence printed out that people have sent me, questions from everywhere. And being a mom, I think I look at it selfishly, like how is this going to affect my kids? And one thing that came really loud and clear tonight is I really think we need to take a pause and look at how it's affecting our staff and our teachers. I was surprised to hear that we're just doing allowances within the Corona Relief Act for teachers and staff that don't feel safe or can't return to school for our quarantining. I mean, that's guidance, but I believe we should go above and beyond that guidance. I can't see putting my kid in a classroom with a teacher that's so stressed out about everything else that's going on in the world. And adding another layer to that, I think that I would love to see us take some more consideration as well into just how can we support the mental health of our staff and teachers. We haven't talked too much about that. And I know, not that the work isn't being done, but I don't necessarily see it because I'm in my bubble. So I guess I don't know that those are actually questions so much as things that I'm thinking about and worried about. I know I have an 18-year-old who is 6 feet tall, and in her senior year, she was 6 feet tall, and to think of putting her in the guidelines of just stay 3 feet apart, because that's what somebody told me, like that's the least we have to do, doesn't feel good. I don't think that we should just do the minimum. Not that we are. I know that sounds super mean. I love everybody, and you guys do amazing work, and I don't mean that at all, but my thoughts are amazing. So I just think we have some more things that we have to think through, and maybe not a lot of time to do it. So I think that's my concern at this point. Can I stop talking before you get there?
I think people can't hear.
No, I know. It's rare for me to be told I'm too quiet.
I know, that's right.
That's why I'm down here, isn't it, Jenny?
Okay, do we have any other questions?
I did, and
Kate?
this might be for you a little bit more, Christine. If I'm waffling, not that I am, but if I were, between like a full distance learning model or the hybrid, I would love to hear a little bit more just to help with my decision on what you're thinking it will look like for students on that off day. I know we talked about the fact that they won't necessarily be in a Zoom with their teacher, so they won't have that interaction, they won't have that engagement. Some of this is from a selfish viewpoint. I'm a work-at-home parent, and so what does that mean for me on those days? How much is that going to require of me? Not that I'm saying a teacher needs to watch them on that day. I'm definitely not saying that, but I guess I just want to know what that distance learning day looks a little bit more, because I don't know that we necessarily got a really clear picture on that.
Okay, so I'll talk about the hybrid piece, what we're trying to work with other teachers and figure these pieces out. So the goal is that your child would be in school all day on Monday and get awesome instruction right in person from your teacher. So the goal is that the teacher would set the table for the next day. So I've gathered you together, we've done all this learning. Tomorrow on your own, here's what I'd like you to do. And you're providing them with opportunities to do some learning, hopefully with limited help from home. We really understand that parents are really stressing out about how do I help my kid? I don't have the time to do that. I'm trying to work from home. And how can we be creative in what we're asking students to do at home in order to cover what we're trying to cover for our kiddos? Personally, my own children, their district, my girls will go to school Monday and Tuesday, and that's it. And so they don't get that day in between to work on their own, because now when your child's at home working Tuesday, Wednesday morning I greet your baby back, and I'm like, how did we do at our learning at home? Let's review this, let's touch base. So now you're taking the pulse of, did kids miss something? Do I need to intervene? And then I start my instruction the next day, and I set the plate for the Thursday that they go home. Now, hopefully on Friday, there's an opportunity for some office hours where kiddo didn't know, I can Zoom in. We're going to be asking that teachers kind of set up a schedule, and it's published so that you know that when you can touch base with them. So that was a big consideration when looking at distance learning. It's the same thing if it's a distance learning option. We're going to be very transparent about the schedule of what time I need to be on, what the instruction will look like, and then what I need to do on my own, and then what I need to follow up with my teacher on. So that's why we're building those modules, kind of like a hybrid one of even helping teachers understand what should I be doing in class, and then what should I kind of be saving for them to do independently with a little bit of help at home if needed. So that's what we're trying to build it on, and I know it's really hard to envision. I also am looking forward to having staff back to have those conversations and some tools that they can help brainstorm. They're brilliant when it comes to this stuff. They have great ideas of how to engage kids. And that's what we need to be a part of. We have to think about what we're asking kids to do a little bit differently. It can't be just worksheets. It can't be a once or twice a week Zoom meeting and that's all that we have. And again, the way we end a year is very different the way that we start a year. And so things will be a little bit more structured and a little bit more routine because we also had staff that were working 24/7. And I had to say, you can't be on all the time. That's not fair to you. That's not fair to your family. So we got to hit that sweet spot to kind of help and support all of that. So we're continuing to work. I wish I had more for you. But again, these guys are on vacation. I need them to be on vacation and think, but we're going to give it our best shot and give everybody the tools that they need. So
And
that's
just to follow up on Anna's point about the mental health of the teachers, I really hope that you lay down a law, like do not answer emails after a certain amount of time, and put that expectation out so families know that, because just knowing it'll be so difficult for them to
It's extremely difficult because our teachers want to do the best that they can for all of our students. And sometimes we don't even know when to say no, like the email needs to come off. And it's a good reminder. I will share with you at the end of the school year, chatting with some staff, I said to them, I need you to go and have summer and come back refreshed because we don't know what fall is going to look like. We're going to be tired. And I'm going to need you to have that really great positive thinking and brainstorming. So take a break from us. Take a break, rejuvenate, take care of your family. Now you're refreshed. And then when we know what we can do, that's when we need you to help us crack the rest of this and work your magic in our classrooms.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Pete.
Janie, just a comment, and again, this is just a personal thing for me. I think the 19th sounds really far away. So if there's an opportunity for us to make some sort of a decision or recommendation sooner than that, I think there's a lot of angst in the community, and there's, we got to think of our staff too. There's time for preparation. If we wait until the 19th, school's not that much longer after that. So that's just a suggestion to me.
Thank you.
That was exciting.
We have a leadership meeting tomorrow, and that would definitely be part of our conversation. I agree with you. This artificial, hell, we went every Wednesday from January to, there's no reason we couldn't do it on another day other than a Wednesday, but sooner. I agree. We'll get back. I will write to you tomorrow and let you know, and the big guy will tell everybody else. Okay, we all set? Thanks, everyone, for coming. We're going to move on to appointments. So, Christina.
I move to approve the following appointments for the 2020-2021 school year. Mary Goucher, special education teacher, Wyndham Middle School, MA0, salary $43,169. Stephanie Gray, special education psych coordinator, Wyndham High School, master's 13, salary $61,864.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries, the appointments carry. Okay, Scott.
I move that the vote entitled Vote to Authorize $1,563,490 School Revolving Renovation Fund Financing for Schools Located in Raymond be approved in the form presented to this meeting, and that the secretary file an attested copy of said vote with the minutes of this meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor? Did you vote, Kate? Okay. Motion carries.
It's so nice not reading names.
I like not playing with the mute button myself.
Anna?
Sorry. I move that the vote entitled Vote to Authorize $1,022,919 School Revolving Renovation Fund Financing for School Located in Wyndham be approved in form presented to this meeting, and that the secretary file an attested copy of said vote with the minutes of this meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay. Could I have a motion on the report of the secretary?
I move to approve the minutes of the June 24th, 2020 meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor? Pete?
I move to approve the minutes of the July 15th, 2020 meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, so I was there for this meeting, and so all of the counts are incorrect. They all say 8, and this should read 9. As a matter of fact, I was the one that moved to adjourn the meeting.
Memories. Okay,
Which one, was that the July?
It's the 15th.
but he wasn't there for the 22nd.
I will have Terry make those
Oh,
corrections.
I wasn't at that meeting though, was I?
It says you were there.
I was going to say, was I?
I don't think I was at the 15th.
You weren't.
So I think the counts are right, they just.
Okay, so,
Wrong
It's something
people.
with you. Well,
okay, so the counts are correct.
Yeah.
I was there.
Okay, so all those in favor? Motion carries.
I move to approve the minutes of the July 22nd, 2020 meeting.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, committee reports.
Finance is not met.
Okay. Curriculum has not met.
Facilities has a meeting coming up on the 19th.
Policy met, and it is reflected in the Title IX work that you saw.
Okay, great. Board roundtable. Anybody round here? Okay. Superintendent's report.
Sure, I'll make this quick. Pete, I actually want to connect with you to set up a finance meeting to talk about the Corona relief funds that the district has received. We received $2.4 million to help with the reopening of schools. All of those funds have to be pledged, encumbered by September 30, and have to be spent by December 30. So want to sit with finance and talk about what we're planning to use those funds for. They cannot be used for lost revenue. They cannot be used for anything in which we previously budgeted, so they can't supplant. And they all have to be related to COVID-19 and things that the district's putting into place. There is some discussion that in the next relief package that maybe any additional funds would take care of that lapse that would happen after December 30. So one of the things we're looking at is cleaning supplies, cleaning staff, extra vendors and things doing in that we might be able to continue those contracts, but I'd like facilities and finance to coordinate with that. And then lastly, with the Raymond withdrawal, the Raymond committee submitted their paperwork to the commissioner 2 weeks ago, and they had their meeting, I think, on the 22nd, where the board had met on the 15th. And right now, that all sits with the commissioner, and we'll wait and see what the feedback is.
And then Anna's already scheduled a meeting for August 19th for the public hearing.
I think that was because that was the soonest they could have
maybe
met
that's-
if
yeah.
the commissioner signed the papers like that day. That, now that you're saying that, I think that was, sorry, my apologies.
A little wishful thinking, I'm sorry.
Okay, could I have another motion?
I move to adjourn the regular meeting.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, all those in favor? The motion carries. Thanks, everyone.